Hey everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel, Code and Create. I hope you're all doing well and ready to dive into another exciting part of our project. In the previous part, we took on the pricing and contact sections, implementing some fantastic features and adding smooth animations that brought our site to life. Those interactions made the components not only functional, but also visually appealing and more engaging for users. I hope you enjoyed building those sections as much as we did and found the process insightful. Now let's talk about what we are tackling today. We are diving into the question section, or the QA section as some of you might call it. This section is super important for any website because it helps address the most common queries your users might have, providing them with answers in a concise and user-friendly way. Our goal for this part is to create a dynamic interactive QA section with a clean and modern design. Before we jump into the coding, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you find it helpful, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upcoming tutorials. Plus, feel free to leave a comment below with your thoughts or questions. Your engagement really helps the channel and we love hearing from you all. Alright, let's get started with an overview of what we are going to build. The questions section is designed to present information in an organized and engaging way. We will start with a clear and inviting heading, questions and answers, that sets the tone for the section. Beneath the heading, we have a series of questions arranged in a column layout. Each question will be contained in a clickable box that toggles the visibility of the answer when clicked. This way, users can interactively browse through the questions and answers, getting the information they need without being overwhelmed. But that's not all. To really elevate this section, we will implement subtle yet effective animations using frame of motion. When a user clicks on a question, it will reveal the answer with a smooth expanding effect. We will also have an arrow icon next to each question, which will rotate to indicate whether the answer is open or closed. This small detail might seem minor, but it adds a lot of interactivity and visual feedback, making the user experience much more intuitive and enjoyable. We're going to structure the questions using a flexible column layout, ensuring that they stack neatly on top of each other with enough spacing in between to keep things clean and organized. As the user scrolls through the section, each question will come into view with a smooth animation, making the section feel lively and dynamic. These animations will give our QA section a polished, professional look that really grabs the user's attention. So let's go ahead and dive right into the code. The first thing that we have to do is to create a new component. It's going to be questions.jsx. Then I'm going to create a new functional component using RAFCE shortcut. Let's add here use client. Then I'm going to open page.js file, and here I'm going to import newly created component. We need questions, and then we have to nest the component inside here. We need again questions. Okay, let's go back to the questions.jsx file. Now I'm going to add here heading, and then we need text attribute with the content, questions and answers. Then I'm going to import heading from subcomponent. Let's select heading. Okay, let's go to the browser. So as you can see, we have here the heading, questions and answers. Now I'm going to add the content to our component. So right after heading, I'm going to open div tab, in which we will have UL. So inside the UL element, we will have an li element, which will represent the question. But instead of inserting here li element, I'm going to create new subcomponents inside the subfolder. Let's call it question.jsx. Then I'm going to create here a new functional component. We need again use client. Now instead of div element, I'm going to add here li. And then I'm going to import that newly created subcomponent question inside the questions component. So we need here subfolder, and then we have to select question. And now I'm going to insert inside the UL element the newly imported subcomponent question. Okay, now if we go to the browser, you will find here the li element question. Now I'm going to go to the question.jsx file and add here some content. Inside the li element, we have to create heading, h1 heading element, which will include the span elements. In this span element, we will include the arrow icon, but right now I'm going to insert just the word arrow. We'll replace this hard-coded text with the actual icon soon. Next, we need another span element, which will include the question, the text of the question. So at the end of the day, we will import the data from our index.js file. Before we describe the data here, I'm going to copy this question and add it inside here. Next, I'm going to create paragraph, and inside here we need an answer. So I'm going to grab answer from here. Let's paste it here. Okay, so actually that's it about the content of the question subcomponent and actually the questions component. Now we have to style those elements. Let's go to the questions.jsx file and style the first development. The wrapper. So we need here class name. Actually, we need here double S's. I'm going to define padding vertically using py20, and then we need padding horizontally using px96. So as you can see, the space is created inside the section. Next, I'm going to customize the UL elements. Let's add here class name. So in case of UL, we need the flex layout. I'm going to add here flex. Then we need to change the direction of the flex layout. We need flex column. And also I'm going to create gap y with the value 3. Okay, so that's it about the questions component. Next, we have to go to the question.jsx file, which is a subcomponent, and we have to style those elements. Let's start with the li element. Add here class name. So in case of li element, we need border. Then we need border yellow, 500. Next, I'm going to create padding with the value 1. And also, I'm going to add here rounded LG. Now, if we go to the browser, you'll find here a li element with nice border. Next, I'm going to customize the heading. So I'm going to add here class name. We need flex followed by item center. Next, I'm going to add border at the bottom. For that, we need border B. Then I'm going to customize the text. Let's define the size of the text. It's going to be XL. Next, we need font to be extra light. Then we need text yellow, 600. Also, I'm going to create space between the letters using tracking white. And finally, we need cursor pointer. Okay, so as you can see, the heading is customized. The question part. Next, I'm going to customize the answer, which is a paragraph. So let's add to the paragraph class name. We need here padding on the left side, 8. Then text is going to be LG. Also, I'm going to set font to extra light. Then we need tracking white to create the space between the letters. The color of the text is going to be gray, so we need text gray 900. And then I'm going to create a little indentation on the left side using first letter. Then we need PL with the value 3. Okay, so that's it about the styling part. Now that we've created the content and styled the question section, it's time to replace the hard-coded data with the dynamic data stored in our index.js file. I'm going to place this file here on the right side. Let's add here comment QA. So before we dive into the coding, let's first take a closer look at the data we'll be working with. In our index.js file, we have an array called questions. Each object in this array represents a question and its corresponding answer, which will be dynamically rendered in the questions section. The questions array is structured to include a question property, which holds the question itself, and an answer property, which contains the corresponding answer. This is a clean and efficient way to store all of our QA content, making it easy to map through the array and render each question answer pair dynamically. For example, one of the objects looks like this. It contains a question about how much we charge for a website, followed by a detailed answer explaining our pricing range. Every question in the array follows the same structure, so we can map through them in our component and display them on the page. In addition to the questions and answers, we also have an imported icon, the questions arrow, which we will use as a visual indicator next to each question. The icon will rotate when a question is clicked, signaling to the user whether the answer is expanded or collapsed. This will enhance the overall interactivity and user experience. With this dynamic structure in place, updating the content or changing the order of questions becomes super easy. So let's go ahead and replace the hard-coded data with the dynamic one. The first thing that we have to do is to import the data we set up in the index.js file. We're going to import the questions array from assets so that we can access all the QA content we've prepared. I'm going to go to the questions.jsx file and insert here import statement. I'm going to insert here questions array, and then we need from assets. Once we have the data available, the next step is to map through the array and display each question individually. We'll use the map method to loop through the questions array and render the question component for each question object. So here, inside the UL element, I'm going to open curly braces, and then we need questions array, followed by the map function. We need here a callback function with two parameters. The first one is going to be question. As for the second one, we need here I. So in the map method, we pass in two key things: the data for each question, which includes both the question and the answer, and the index to help us keep track of the specific item in the array. Next, we have to insert the question component into the map function to display all the questions. So I'm going to cut this subcomponent from here and paste it inside the map function. As you already know, we have to pass here a key prop with the value I. So by adding a key property tied to the index, React can efficiently manage and render each unique question on the page. In the question component, we have to pass two props. The first one is going to be data, which will be equal to question. As for the second prop, it's going to be index, and I'm going to pass here I. So the data prop contains the specific content for each question and answer. This includes the question text, the corresponding answer, and any other data that we may have for that particular question. By passing this prop, we can access and display the unique question and answer for each item in the array. The index prop, on the other hand, provides the position of the question in the questions array. This is useful for managing things like animations or dynamic styles based on the question's position in the list. Both data and index help ensure that each question component renders the correct information and behaves uniquely depending on its position within this section. So once this is done, all the questions will be displayed on the page. So if we go to the browser, then you will see that all the questions are displayed on the page. But as you can see, they still have the same contents, as we haven't yet told React to use the individual data for each question. To fix this, we need to move into the question.jsx file and make a few key changes. So let's open question.jsx file. First, we need to import the question arrow icon from the assets file. So I'm going to add here import statement. Then we need question arrow from assets. The icon is going to be placed next to each question and will rotate when a question is expanded or collapsed. Once it is imported, we can add this arrow icon into the JSX of the question. Once it is imported, we can add this arrow icon into the JSX of the question component to visually enhance each question. So here, instead of this word, I'm going to open code braces and insert question arrow. So if we go to the browser, then we won't get here any arrows. Let's check the code. I'm going to check the name of the variable. It is question arrow with capital Q. Actually, I'm going to make it lowercase. Now let's go to the browser. So as you can see, now in front of each question, we have an arrow. So everything works fine. And next we need to extract the props being passed into the question component. So here I'm going to add data and index. The data prop will contain the specific question and answer for each item in the array, and the index prop will give us the position of the question in the array. We extract these props by defining them as parameters in our question component. Once extracted, we can then replace the hard-coded question and answer with the dynamic content from the data prop. For the question itself, we will replace the placeholder content with data.question. This will dynamically display the individual question from the questions array, and similarly, we will replace the placeholder for the answer with data.answer, ensuring that each question is paired with its specific answer. Now, if we go to the browser, we will get all the questions with their individual questions and answers. So by making these modifications, we ensure that each question in the QA section is displayed with its own unique content, and everything is being pulled from the data stored in our index.js file. This approach keeps our components flexible and maintainable, making it easy to update the questions in the future without hard-coding new content. Alright, now we're going to manage the interactivity of our questions section by making the answers collapse and expand when we click the questions. Additionally, we will rotate the arrow icon next to each question to visually indicate whether the answer is open or closed. To begin, we need to manage the state that controls whether a question's answer is displayed or not. For this, we will create a state variable that will hold this information. So here I'm going to create new state variable. It's going to be show with the updater function setShow. We need here useState, and by default I'm going to insert here false. So this line initializes a state variable show with an initial value of false. This variable is essential for controlling the visibility of the answer in the QA section. When show is false, the answer is hidden, and when show is true, the answer is displayed. The setShow function allows us to update the value of show when a user clicks on a question, toggling the visibility of the answer. This way, we can dynamically manage the collapsing and expanding of the answers based on user interaction. We also need to import the useState hook from React. So we need here import useState from React. Now, in order to rotate the arrow icon when the question is clicked, we will use Framer Motion's animate functionality. First, we need to import motion from the Framer Motion library. So we need here import motion from Framer Motion. Next, we will wrap the span element containing the arrow icon with the motion span. So here we need to add motion This allows us to apply animations to the span using framer motion. To control the rotation of the arrow, we will add the animate attribute to the motion span element. The value of the animate attribute will depend on the show state. So here I'm going to add animate, which will be equal to rotate. Then we need show, followed by a ternary operator. If show is true, we need the rotation with the value 180 degrees. And if it is false, then we need 0. So again, if show is true, meaning the answer is visible, the arrow will rotate to 180 degrees. Otherwise, it will remain at its default 0 degrees. To make this rotation interactive, we need to add a way for the state to change when the user clicks on the question. We will do this by adding an onClick event handler to the h1 heading element, which is the clickable question text. When the user clicks on the question, we will toggle the show state by calling setShow and passing the opposite of its current value. So I'm going to add here onClick event handler, in which we need a callback function, and then we have to update the state variable show using setShow method. And as the parameter, the argument, we need not show. So this will allow the answer to either collapse or expand, and at the same time the arrow will rotate based on the updated state. In order to check the result, let's go to the browser. Now if we click the headings, then the arrow will rotate. Okay, so everything works fine. And now we're going to dynamically change the styles of the heading element to make it more interactive and visually responsive based on user actions. The goal is to highlight the question and add a border beneath it when the user clicks on it, indicating that the answer is currently being displayed. To achieve this, we'll make a few modifications to the existing class name on the h1 heading element. Currently, the h1 heading has fixed styles like border bottom and text yellow 600, which are always applied regardless of whether the answer is visible or hidden. We want to make these styles more dynamic, so they change depending on whether the answer is shown or collapsed. Here is how we will do it. First, we will replace the static class name with a template string. So I'm going to cut the classes. Then I'm going to open curly braces with backticks, and I'm going to paste back the class names. So this allows us to inject dynamic values into the class based on the state of the show variable. Using this approach, we can conditionally apply styles only when the answer is being displayed. Next, we will use the show state variable to determine when the question is clicked and dynamically apply the styles. So here I'm going to add $sign with curly braces, and then we need show with and operator. Then we need border B and text yellow 600. So if show is true, meaning the user has clicked the question and the answer is visible, we will add both a bottom border and change the text color to yellow. This helps visually indicate that the answer is expanded. We have to get rid of these classes as the default classes. So I'm going to get rid of border B, and then we need to get rid of text yellow 600. If show is false, meaning the question has not been clicked or the user has collapsed the answer, we will add the heading the following styles. We need text gray 800, and then I'm going to add here hover effect. We need text yellow 600. This change not only makes the component more interactive, but also provides a clean user experience by clearly showing which question is currently open. By applying styles conditionally, the UI becomes more responsive and intuitive. Let's go to the browser. So as you can see, by default, all the questions are gray. Now if we hover over the questions, they will change the color. And also if we click the headings, then they will change their styles. Okay, so everything works perfectly. Now we're going to manage the collapsing functionality of the questions by making the answers visible when a question is clicked and then hiding them on the next click. This functionality is essential for making the QA section interactive, clean, and user-friendly. We will achieve this by using framer motion to smoothly animate the collapsing and expanding of the answers. To start, we need to wrap the P element, which contains the answer, with a motion P component from framer motion. So here I'm going to insert motion. The next step is to manage the visibility of the answers based on the show state variable that we defined earlier. When a user clicks on a question, the show state will toggle between true and false, and the answer's visibility will be adjusted accordingly. Now let's break down the attributes we will add to the motion P element. The first one is going to be initial, which should be equal to scale y with the value 0, then we need height with 0, and opacity with again 0. So this defines the starting state of the answer before any interaction happens. Here we set scale y to 0, height to 0, and opacity to 0. This means that initially the answer will be collapsed, making it invisible. Next, I'm going to add another attribute, which is animate. It should be equal to scale y with the value show, then ternary operator. If show is true, we need here 1. Otherwise, the value will be 0. Next, we need height. Let's use again show with a ternary operator. So if show is true, we need auto. And if it is false, then we need 0. And finally, we need here opacity. Again, I'm going to insert here show. If it is true, we need here 1. And if it is false, we need here 0. So again, this defines what happens when the show state changes. If show is true, we want the answer to be fully visible. So we set scale y to 1, height to auto, meaning it will adjust to the content size, and opacity to 1. These values make the answer expand and fade in. When show is false, the values reverse. Scale y goes back to 0, height becomes 0 again, and opacity returns to 0, collapsing the answer and making it invisible. By using framer motion's animation properties, the transition between the collapsed and expanded states will be smooth, giving a polished user experience. Let's go to the browser and click the questions. So, as you can see, once we click the questions, the answers become visible, and once we click them again, they hide. Okay, so everything works perfectly. Now we're going to take our question section to the next level by adding smooth animations that will make the appearance of each question more engaging and interactive. These animations will allow the questions to fade in and slide into view as the user scrolls down the page. By implementing these animations, we can make the questions come to life in a way that feels more responsive and visually appealing. The animations we're about to create will adjust both the opacity and horizontal position of each question as it comes into the user's viewport. This will ensure the questions don't simply appear on the screen, but rather animate into place, creating a more engaging user experience. Framer motion will make this process simple, yet it allows us to add a touch of sophistication to how our content is presented. So let's go ahead and walk through the modifications in detail. First, we need to define how the animations will behave. To achieve this, we will create a variance object. This object will determine two key states for each question's list item: a hidden state when the question is off-screen or invisible, and a visible state as the question animates into view. So let's go ahead and create a new variable. I'm going to call it variance. As I said, it's going to be an object. So we need to create here two states: visible, in which we will have a callback function. I'm going to add here I index. Actually, we need here parentheses. So inside here, I'm going to add opacity with the value 1. Then we need X, 0, and also we need transition, in which I'm going to insert delay. with the value I multiplied by 0.07. So that's all about visible state. Next, we need hidden state. And I'm going to add here opacity 0. And then we need x with the value -30. So in the visible state, we set the opacity to 1, making the question fully visible. Additionally, we set the x position to 0, ensuring the question sits in its final, centered position on the page. To add a bit of visual flair, we introduce a delay in the transition, which will stagger the animation of each question. By multiplying the index of the question by 0.07, we can create this delayed cascading effect where each question appears in sequence rather than all at once. In the hidden state, we set the opacity to 0, which makes the question invisible initially, and position the x value to -30. This will slide the question slightly to the left when it is hidden, creating a more dramatic effect as it enters the viewport and slides into its final position. Next, we need to apply these animations to our questions. To do this, we will wrap the li element, which represents a question, with motion li. Wrapping these elements in motion li is what allows us to connect the defined animations from the variance object to the actual question components. So as I said, we have to wrap li with motion. Once we've done that, we need to add several important attributes to our motion li element. These attributes will control exactly when and how the animations take place. First, we will use the custom prop to pass the index of each question. So I'm going to add here custom with the value index. This custom prop allows us to control the delay for each question's appearance, ensuring that they animate in sequence with a brief pause between each one. Next, we need the initial attribute, and the value is going to be hidden. So this initial attribute will define the starting state of the animation, which in this case is hidden. This ensures that when the page loads, the questions are invisible and slightly offset to the left, waiting to be animated into view. Next, I'm going to add here while in view attribute, which will be equal to visible. So the while in view attribute tells Framer Motion to animate the question into its visible state as soon as it enters the user's viewport. This makes sure that questions only animate when they are actually seen by the user, which not only creates a great user experience, but also optimizes the performance of our page by not animating elements that are not yet in view. Next, we have to add the viewport attribute. So I'm going to add here viewports, which will be equal to an object with two properties. The first one is going to be margin equal to 50 pixels. And then we need once with the value true. So this allows us to specify how close the question should be to the viewport before the animation is triggered. In this case, we set the margin to 50 pixels, meaning the question will start to animate when it's 50 pixels from entering the viewport. Additionally, we set once to true, which ensures that the question only animates the first time it enters the viewport and does not animate again if the user scrolls back up and down the page. Finally, we have to apply the variance attribute, which connects the hidden and visible states we defined earlier to the actual question element. So I'm going to add here variance with the value variance. This tells Framer Motion how to transition between the hidden and visible states for each question. So by adding these modifications, we're creating a much more dynamic and visually engaging experience for the user. Each question will no longer just appear on the page, but will instead smoothly fade in and slide into view as the user scrolls. Let's go to the browser and reload the page. If we scroll down, then we'll get this nice and cool effect. Let's reload again and scroll down. So as you can see, the questions are appearing in a cool and nice way. Alright, so Let's open the questions. Actually, it looks like that we forgot to add a smooth animation to the answers of the questions, but don't worry, we're going to fix that now. To enhance the overall user experience, we will be adding a spring animation effect to the paragraphs, so when the answers collapse or expand, they will do so in a much more fluid and visually pleasing way. So let's go back to the VS Code. I'm going to add transition property to the motion P, in which I'm going to insert duration with the value 0.1. Then I'm going to add here type spring. Next we will have here stiffness, and I'm going to insert here conditional statement. We need show, followed by a ternary operator. Then we need 250 or 50. And finally, I'm going to add here opacity. We need here delay with again show state variable. If it is true, we need here 0.2, and if it is false, we need 0. So let me explain what's going on here. The duration attribute is set to 0.1, which controls how long the transition takes. We want the effect to be quick but noticeable, so 0.1 seconds strikes the right balance. Next we use type spring, which adds the natural bounce or spring effect to the animation, making it feel more lively rather than a simple linear movement. To control how firm or loose the spring is, we set the stiffness value. When the answer is visible, we use a higher stiffness of 250 to give it a snappier feel, while when it's hidden, the stiffness drops to 50 to make the collapse softer and more gradual. Finally, we use the opacity attribute to add a subtle fade-in effect. The delay is set conditionally based on whether the answer is being revealed or hidden. If the answer is being shown, there is a small delay of 0.2 seconds before the opacity change happens, allowing the user to feel the progression of the animation rather than it happening instantly. With these adjustments, our answers will now animate with a much smoother and more dynamic feel, adding to the overall quality and polish of the section. So let's go to the browser and reload the page. At first I'm going to scroll down and then open the answers. So as you can see, we have here this nice and cool animation. Alright, so now that we've completed the question section, let's quickly recap what we have accomplished. We took static questions and transformed them into an interactive animated QA section. We started by replacing the hard-coded content with dynamic data, making it easy to manage and scale. Then we added animations using framer motion, allowing the questions to slide into view smoothly and adding a great rotating effect to the arrow icons. We also made the answers collapse and expand, ensuring a clean and intuitive user experience. Altogether, this has made the QA section not just functional but also visually engaging. If you found this tutorial helpful, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future content. And of course, feel free to drop a comment below if you have any questions or thoughts about this project. In the next part, we'll be diving into building an interactive navbar that will tie our entire site together, so stay tuned, you will not want to miss that. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.